Hi Aries, and welcome to your reading for the upcoming lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. So can you believe it, we have actually got to the final eclipse season for 2020, and I think, you know, just the fact that you've made it thus far in one piece, you should pat yourself on the back. It's not been an easy year, particularly for the cardinal signs, and for Aries in particular. You've had Chiron going through your sign, you've had Mars retrograde also in Aries, so you know, kind of lots going on. But anyway, the good news is that as we move into Sagittarius season, which begins on the 21st of November, things are going to start feeling a lot more positive and upbeat, and that energy is going to continue, largely speaking, as we move into December, not just because of Sagittarius season, which is of course ruled by Jupiter, which is very expansive and upbeat, but also because the eclipses themselves are kind of bringing in fresh energy, particularly that December solar eclipse that's happening on the 14th. But I'm going to do that in a separate forecast, because before we get there, we first have to kind of work through the issues that are brought up by the November eclipse, which is the lunar eclipse in Gemini. So again, though, there is a lot of positive energy around in this particular eclipse, a lot of healing energy, a lot of opportunities to really up-level our thinking and to get clear about what it is that we want going forward. So this is a great time to set priorities and just get clear about what we want to leave behind in 2020 and what we want to take forward into 2021, because of course the solar eclipse in December is similar to the one last year, where we had in December, where we had that solar eclipse in Capricorn, which took us into the first half of 2020. In much the same way, the solar eclipse in Sagittarius mid-December is also going to be setting the tone for the next 6 months. So this is really a chance to kind of wrap up the last 6 months in many ways, particularly if you think back to the eclipse that we had in June, the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. This is almost a twin to that eclipse, because it's in the polar opposite sign. So a few things that may come up now for clearing or for transmuting or for integrating. So let's go through them in a little bit more detail before we do your Geoscope. So the first thing to say, of course, is that this lunar eclipse happens in the sign of Gemini, and this means that the sun and the moon, the full moon, of course, will be in your third and your ninth houses. So the moon will be in the third house, which is the house of communication, intellects, self-expression, as well as short-term journeys, close siblings and relatives, neighbors, your neighborhood basically. And then the sun will be in Sagittarius in the ninth house, which is of course the natural house for Sagittarius. So for you, this is about getting clear about your beliefs, and also what you feel that you've learned, and you know, where you've kind of graduated, so that you feel that you can then impart that knowledge to others, because the third ninth axis is very much about both learning and teaching. So it's about listening, taking communications in, but equally it is about you know, speaking your truth as well. So that's the first thing to say. So I'm going to put the sun and the moon in those houses. So here we've got the moon in the third house, and we've got the sun here in the ninth house. So the next thing to say is that this particular lunar eclipse is going to take place in the 8th degree of Gemini and Sagittarius, and I have discussed the Sabian symbol in my general forecast, which you can check out on YouTube. I have put a link you know, at the end of this video, so you can just you know, link directly to that through the, you know, if you go to the end of the video. But this very much is about kind of getting clear about what your target is. It's about an archer with his quiver of arrows and his bow, and which of course speaks very much of the sun in Sagittarius. And what it's doing is it's kind of asking us to set our targets. What intentions do we want to set at that December 14 new moon solar eclipse that we want to take into 2021? So this is about getting clear about your priorities and your plans and your goals for the next year. Now, of course, you probably think, oh gosh, well, it's not even the end of 2020 yet, and we're already talking about New Year's resolutions. But cosmically speaking, the December solstice in particular, that corridor that starts mid-December with the solstice, with the eclipse, and then moves into the solstice energy, which has got a fantastic Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which again I discuss in my cosmic weather forecast. That really is a kind of a huge pressing of the reset button that I think will be a kind of like a very jubilant new year. So it's going to happen in cosmic kind of terms earlier than the calendar, is basically what I'm saying. But what else is going on for you in terms of the planets? Well, Mars, your ruler, will be direct finally, and it will be, of course, in your first house. So that's probably enormously good news. You probably will notice that from November the 14th, so just after that 11:11 gateway, that your energy started to return, your physical energy, your sense of drive, motivation, purpose, feeling like you can accomplish things, that you can make progress, that there's forward movement and momentum, essentially. So you've basically got your mojo back, which I think you'll be really pleased about. And of course, Mars during November and some of December is going to be making some fantastic aspects to the outer planets, so you should really enjoy this time. I think it's going to be very productive for you in terms of achieving goals and kind of reaching into the future. The one thing I will say about it is that it is to an extent energetically about right now, certainly at this eclipse, it will be about almost like an awakening, like sometimes it can be almost like a surge of energy, which can feel like a bit of a shock, like an electrical shock. And it's a form of awakening, so it's sort of like a tower moment, but not necessarily in the negative sense. It's what the I Ching would call a fertilizing shock. So it's about a kind of like a jolt, a kind of an awakening jolt, a call to action, if you like. That it's time to sort of really make progress and to move forward with plans. So that's the one thing I will say. But your willpower, I think, will be back in a big way. So I think think back to the spring equinox. It's a similar kind of an energy going on where you you kind of feel like the world is at your feet and that you can accomplish things, and you've got that sense of confidence and momentum back, which is wonderful. And then the other thing about this particular lunar eclipse, which is very positive, is that Mercury will be making a sextile to Saturn, which is wonderful. It's kind of solidifying. So if you are thinking about formulating plans, if you're thinking ahead to that target that you want to, your arrows and things to hit in terms of your intentions, then I think the important thing now is to really get clear about what it is that you want, but equally what you don't want. So this is really about a kind of a refinement of your intentions as far as manifesting is concerned, and also getting very clear about your plans and strategies to move ahead. So Mercury for you will be in your 8th house, and this is the house of shared resources and joint ventures. So you may well be in discussions with one other person with regards to possibly doing some kind of business venture together, or a creative project, or something that could potentially earn you both some money, or you could, equally you could be kind of meeting a mentor. That's the other way that this energy can work, because Saturn will be in your 10th house of ambition and of kind of goals and your sense of purpose. So it could very well be that you are teaming up with somebody who's got more experience than you in a particular area, somebody who can take you to the next level, in which case it should be very successful, because this is a very, very positive aspect. And it's fair to say too that I do go into a lot of detail about each of these aspects in my cosmic weather forecast, so I'm not going to dwell on them sort of in too much detail, but needless to say, I do think that it's a great time for career discussions and for discussions around joint ventures, making plans, and that kind of thing, setting goals. So that's the other thing. And then the sun and the moon will also be making some really, really positive aspects to Chiron, which is currently retrograde in Aries, so it's here in your first house. And in many ways for me, this is about kind of getting clear about what sovereignty means. To an extent, individualism is about disentangling from the so-called matrix, disentangling from any kind of paradigm or involvement with others that kind of makes you that can be draining sort of energetically, or that kind of distracts you from your sole purpose or your path in life. But of course the flip side to that, we are talking about Chiron, which is about the wounded healer. The flip side to that is that sometimes becoming free from entanglement can also sometimes mean feeling a little bit alienated, so feeling a little bit separated from others in many ways. And that is kind of part and parcel of the dark night of the soul. Very often there's that period where we separate from our peers and from those that we used to potentially associate with, because we realize that we've changed, we've kind of up-leveled, and maybe some others don't see life in the same way that we do, and for a brief time that can sometimes be a little bit lonely, but on the positive side, it is about maintaining one's sense of integrity, energetic purity and freedom, and that I think is what we're being asked to really think about at this particular lunar eclipse. As I say, it is a kind of a healing eclipse. It is about a kind of a catharsis and a transmuting of energy, and with the sun and the moon making such a positive aspect to Chiron, I do think that there are enormous opportunities here for healing, and also for learning how to transmute gifts, for turning wounds into pain into power, essentially. So what you've learned from your own life experience, sharing that with others, and potentially then being able to teach from these experiences, because we are talking about the 3rd and the 9th house here. So yes, I think a very positive aspect. And then the final one just to be aware of is Neptune. So Neptune's in Pisces, which is in your 12th house, and Neptune is currently it's currently retrograde, but it's going to be going direct on the 29th of November, so just before this lunar eclipse. So Neptune in your 12th house will be making a T-square to the nodes, and the nodes are also in Gemini and Sagittarius. So this is where the connections to June are going to come in, because we had a very similar T-square happening at that June lunar eclipse. Mars and Neptune had kind of teamed up. This was when Mars was still in Pisces. They teamed up and made a T-square to the nodes, and I think it caused quite a lot of confusion, for people, particularly around what to believe, what's true, what's fake news, what is true, because part of the disentangling from the matrix is kind of being able to sort of know what the truth is. And of course there was a lot of misinformation going on at that time, which I think just muddied the waters. So it may be that there's a kind of carryover now, an opportunity to get clear now, because Neptune is direct. So it's an opportunity to get clear about what you do and don't believe, and perhaps just sort of disentangling a little bit from areas, particularly emotionally, where you may have got a little bit confused. So for me, Neptune here is really about taking sometimes difficult or painful experiences and turning them into something beautiful. That's the first thing to say. But also learning about emotional self-containment. So there was this kind of huge outpouring of emotion, over the summer after that eclipse, that I think was part and parcel due to Neptune retrograde, a kind of a collective sort of outpouring of emotion, or just kind of getting really in touch with emotions that perhaps up until now have been buried in the subconscious. A huge welling up of feeling. And what we're being asked to do, though, is to find containers for this, because of course the 12th house and Neptune itself is very it's like mist or water, like ocean, and if we don't contain it, there is a tendency for it to kind of flood everywhere, and things can get a little bit messy and confusing and unstructured. So what we're being asked to do now is find healthy containers for the stuff of our subconscious, so that when we want to work with it, we can, but then when we want to focus on other things, we also can almost not compartmentalize, but we can almost sort of feel safe, shut the door, feeling safe that we can come back to that space when we want to, but it's not going to creep into other areas of our lives without our permission. So I think this is where again Mercury and Saturn can be very, very useful. Saturn in particular talks about still in Capricorn, which is an earth sign, so it's very much about progress through self-restraint and accepting limitations. I think that's been a huge theme this year. Even though a lot of structures have kind of fallen away, we've also realized where we are limited. Think of lockdown, for example. Think of its how much restriction is put on the economy for a lot of people and for their livelihoods, and we've all had to try and work around that. The same with trying to socialize. We've had to sort of think outside the box and go for things like Zoom. So equally, I think we have to be equally sort of imaginative or innovative when it comes to the way that we manage our psychological issues. So here, for example, setting up sessions with a psychologist or a therapist, using Zoom might be one way to do it. It kind of gives you that structure that Saturn likes so much, that allows you to have that hour to talk about whatever's really bothering you, and then to sort of know that it's in the diary for next week or next month, and so you can return to that issue. You don't have to work through everything immediately all at once, because it can be a little bit overwhelming. Neptune can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming. And then the other thing to say about Mercury is that it's really in a position at the moment of encouraging us to really look at self-love and positivity, individual self-expression, which I think again is being emphasized by the 3rd and the 9th houses, and of course Mercury rules Gemini, so it's a very, very prominent planet at this particular lunar eclipse. So again, considering that this is a lunar eclipse, which is a full moon, it is to an extent about getting clear in terms of where is your communication style or your current patterns of thinking holding you back or not really helping you, or where is it not a true reflection of who you are inside. Where is there a need to kind of tweak, whether it is your branding, if we're thinking about career here, whether it's about your branding, say your website, redoing your website, your business cards, all of that kind of thing, or whether it's simply the way that you describe yourself to other people, in business discussions or job interviews. How do you see yourself, and how do you express yourself? There's a lot to think about here, and also a lot to potentially release, where you may be undermining yourself or selling yourself short. So that's worth thinking about. So those, I think, are the main kind of astrological themes. As I say, you can have a listen to the cosmic weather forecast that I did, which talks about all of these aspects in general, and that might give you some more ideas for how the astrology is likely to kind of pan out for you. But I think what we should do now is crack out the Geomancy cards and see what messages want to come through in particular. Alright, so I think what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look specifically at the cards that relate to the planets I've been talking about. So let's start, of course, with the moon. So, oh, how wonderful. So this is where the eclipse is going to fall. This is the eclipsed moon, and here we've got water figure of Laitisha. So Laitisha is really about joy, it's about happiness, expansion, and what was I saying about Mercury telling us that we really need to focus on self-love and positivity. So perfect for the third house. So really look at sort of ways of cultivating and expressing joy, happiness, positivity, basically expansive positive emotion. This is Jupiter in Pisces energy, so it's about expansion in the emotional body, which is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And what a joyous and positive, what was I saying about Jupiter, Jupiter energy kind of growing as we move into Sagittarius season. This is such a wonderful confirmation. All right, let's have a look at the Sun. Yes, perfect. So Emissio here, this is what we're clearing out essentially in order to make way for that December 14 solar eclipse, which will happen here in your 9th house. So here we've got Emissio. This is Earth energy and it's Venus in Taurus. So this is what we haven't been able to attain, we feel is out of our reach, or perhaps we've kind of lost. It's the opposite of gain almost. So in geomantic figures, if you think about acquisitio, this is the opposite, emissio. So where do you feel that you perhaps haven't really reached your spiritual goals, or where your beliefs don't really match up to sort of where you find yourself at the kind of in terms of your your philosophy, your spiritual development? Where perhaps do you need to let go of certain beliefs? And this can be about yourself, but equally can be about your philosophy on life. It can also be about what has been unattainable. So, for example, if you had plans to go traveling overseas, perhaps you've had to put those on hold or let go of them altogether. If you were planning to go to university, perhaps you are rethinking that. If you were, potentially thinking about publishing a book, because the 9th house is also about publishing, perhaps that didn't really come off. A lot of publishers had a really, really difficult time during 2020. Again, it's just sort of letting go of what is unattainable or unlikely to happen. So, essentially a waste of energy, and letting go of outmoded or outdated beliefs as well. This can also be cultural conditioning. That's the other way to think about the 9th house. It can be the morals or the ethical mores that we've inherited either from our society or from the cultural background of our family. But I think really just clearing them out so that you can, as I say, press that reset button when we move into the December solar eclipse. And then you'll have 6 months in order to sort of work on that particular issue. But I think right now this is where you are purging. And then let's have a look at this wonderful energy here in Aries. So, wow. This is so interesting. So here we've got conjunctio, which is earth energy. This is Mercury in the exalted position of Virgo. And, as I said, Mercury is going to be very prominent at this particular lunar eclipse. So it'll be interesting to see what geomantic figure comes out with. Let's have a look, actually. Interesting. Look at that. I mean, that's almost mutual reception. So Rubeus being Mars ruled, and of course here we're talking about Mars. This is Aries energy, and then Mercury in the 8th house, and we've got Mercury here in your 1st house with conjunctio. So yes, very, very interesting. So conjunctio for me does kind of sum up this this Mercury Saturn sextile, because conjunctio is about coming together with others, often for the purposes of some kind of project, or shared aim, or it can be marriage. This is essentially union. And so again, interesting developments that may have overlaps or connections to what happened at the 1111 portal, because hexagram 44 came up at in the I Ching reading that I did for that 1111 portal, and that is union as well. So interesting that we've got conjunctio kind of echoing that, and I think it's potentially talking about the fact that Mars went direct round about that time, and of course we've got and I really feel that brought in a lot of healing energy. That's when things really started to turn around, particularly at that new moon in Scorpio. So conjunctio here all about as I say, joining forces with others, collaborating, coming together. So where there may have been polarized energies before, where we may have had differences with others, it's now about, coming together to see the commonalities. And I think this is also why we're being asked to emphasize in terms of our thinking and our speech, what's working, what's right, what is good. Equally here, I think, this is about what brings people together, what unites people rather than what polarizes them. So that's wonderful. And then Rubeus, getting into this more in depth, Rubeus is actually, it's quite appropriate for the 8th house, which is Scorpio ruled. So this is Mars in Scorpio, and this can be about, well, it can be passion, so it can be what we're really passionate about, so a passion project, but equally it can also be where we feel a kind of angry or have deep-seated, sometimes repressed emotions about something. So let's have a look and see what's going on with Saturn. Yes, interesting. So here with Saturn we've got Cauda Draconis, which is Taylor the Dragon, so it's also Earth. And this is very much, I think, epitomizing this lunar eclipse kind of energy, which is about release. So it's about what's leaving our life, what is exiting, and it also has to do with the past. So it can sometimes be about how the past, like past patterns or perhaps incidents from a past life continue to impact us moving forward, and how they can sometimes hold us back or cause us to self-sabotage or not reach our full potential. So I think we're really being asked here to release any emotions that may be causing entanglement. So in the sense of, when you're very, very angry, or you are in an extreme form of emotion, you can almost become possessed by that emotion. You think about kind of OCD or a fixation of some kind of, or an obsession. I think it's calling for a kind of release or a freeing of the energy in order to, to allow things to flow more, so that what needs to leave can leave and what needs to come in can come in. So that, I think, is where your purging is sort of coming in, and clearly related to, as I say, working together with others, in terms of your career going forward, your future plans and goals. So this can also, if you think about this as being sex, death, taxes, and often where we have insecurities, I think you're really being asked to sort of consider releasing your insecurities, because they may well be holding you back here when it comes to moving forward in your career. All right, now let's have a look at Neptune. Oh, wonderful. So Neptune actually rules Pisces. It's the modern ruler. Jupiter's the traditional ruler. So that's why in the Geomancy, Jupiter is the co-ruler of Pisces. So a reiteration of this energy that we've got here with the full moon, which is wonderful. I mean, you think about the full moon. Moons are really about emotions. And, of course, Neptune here in the 12th is about your subconscious emotions. So I think there's a need here to bring the two into alignment where possible, to make what is unconscious conscious, so that it can't kind of rule you from the shadows, if you like. So I think a great time to continue to do the work of Scorpio season, which is all about transmuting shadows, doing shadow work, transmuting dark into light, using the realm of the subconscious to really kind of evolve and grow, and move things from dark to light, from negative to positive. I think that's a very, very big message in this reading. All right, let's have a look at what's going on in your other houses. Nice. Okay. Fascinating. So, I mean, if we consider the repeating figures, Conjunctio here has been your kind of first and main geomantic figure, and we've got it repeated here in your 6th house. So I think this is really saying that as far as Mercury is concerned, at this particular Gemini full moon lunar eclipse, you really are working on coming together with others, and this may mean, so it's collaborating, I think, particularly when it comes to career, and I think what this is requiring is a letting go of certain communication styles, patterns of self-talk, sometimes negative self-talk, but also sometimes, you know, the way that we come across to others, the way that we describe ourselves or limit ourselves through our communication and our speech. And of course, this can also be written communication. It doesn't have to be verbal. So yes, and given that we've got it here in the 6th house, which is the house of work and health, I do think that this is telling me that when it comes to collaborations in particular, that's the way that the Mercury-Saturn sextile is likely to work for you, is very strongly about coming together with others for the purposes of work, and also potentially working with others when it comes to healing. So again, you know, when I was talking about the 12th house Neptune, that it might be a good idea to find a therapist that you can work with if you feel that you're running up against stumbling blocks that need to be released, and that you're battling to sort of transmute on your own. So that's the first thing that I'll say. Let's have a look at the 4th house. Okay. Yes, so letting go of, I think this is also maybe what you are releasing if we consider that the 4th and the 10th house are an axis. So also releasing sorrow, unhappiness, depression, difficulties, particularly with family members, because of course the 4th house is home and family. So it could be, you know, inherited depression, for example, something that you've inherited through the family line. It could also be a particular family member that you have a lot of problems with. You know, again, I think working with somebody, you know, to potentially kind of make sense of this issue for you, or move past it, find healthy coping mechanisms, ways to sort of deal with it, I think would be enormously helpful at this time, because, you know, if you are able to release this energy, I think that you can really make great strides forward in other areas of your life. So it's kind of going to have this positive knock-on effect. And then when it comes to relationships, we've got Via in the 7th house, so things kind of moving forward when it comes to partnerships. Now this could be business partnerships, as I say. I do feel as though there's going to be momentum, you know, building for you here, and I think Mars will really help in this respect. Of course, it could also be moving a relationship forward, so there could be momentum here. But what I'm seeing in the 5th house, which is often new relationships, is Albus. So again Mercury, but this time in Gemini, and this is an air figure. So for me, this is about fresh starts when it comes to relationships, particularly romantic relationships. So if you are single, there is, to me, the possibility of something new coming in, possibly you know, in the 2 weeks that follow this lunar eclipse, or at the December you know, new moon. Now if you are already involved, then this could be about children, so a fresh start for a child. It could be conception, possibly, if you're thinking about having children, some, you know, a kind of a new chapter in your life, in terms of that. And if you are a creative person, then I think that, you know, writing projects in particular may be quite successful, or like a way to go, because this is literally a blank sheet of paper. So drawing, writing, all of that kind of thing, and this could be what you're feeling passionate about, actually. So there could be a sort of connection here between the 5th, the 8th and the 10th. And then when it comes to money, I think that things are definitely going to be on the up. We've got Fortuna Minor here, which is the Sun in Leo below the horizon, so it's almost like the Sun in reverse, but it's still positive. So this is really about help in the terms of like fortunate change of circumstances to income, money and career. It can also be about a change of attitude when it comes to your own skills and abilities, which could be, again, you know, this this flip that you're doing in terms of your kind of mental outlook, your mindset, your attitude. So seeing skills in a fresh light, feeling more confident about your abilities, but I think also positive developments when it comes to income, and this could be why we've got, you know, conjuncture here and the emphasis on your 10th house. So I do see new opportunities to earn money coming in, and generally circumstances improving when it comes to finances. And then the only one I think we haven't done yet is Populus, which is your 11th house. So wonderful to have Populus in your 11th house. It's probably the perfect geomantic figure for that house. So this is all about crowds and group get-togethers. It's about community. So I think you are being encouraged to reach out to others and to find ways to stay in touch with your soul tribe. You know, it is difficult, particularly if you're in the UK and you know, there is kind of lockdown going on, but I think that there are still ways to connect with others. You know, if not social media, then, you know, through WhatsApp or Zoom or email or text or whatever, but definitely I think you could benefit from you know, just kind of communing with others and sharing your experiences. And again, the 3rd and the 9th house, you know, the way that you communicate can also relate to the 11th house of social media and, you know, on your online presence. So blogging, for example, that could be what you're starting here. But yes, I think a lot of satisfaction to be had from communing with others and sharing experiences. Okay, so let's get into your outcome. Okay, so what I'm seeing immediately is forward movement when it comes to relationships, which I do see for you, as I say, forward momentum when it comes to business partnerships and marriages. Definitely things improving, progressing, up-leveling. And, you know, if you are looking for a new relationship, there's definitely a new relationship, you know, potential here. Let's see what else. Okay, so outcome of your reading is it's kind of mirroring this Tristia in your 4th house. So I think what it's telling you is that at this full moon lunar eclipse, the thing that you really do need to let go of is any form of you know, kind of getting stuck in negative emotion. So, you know, grief, sorrow, pain, depression, all of that kind of thing. These are appropriate in circumstances, but not if we stay there. And there's always that temptation, particularly during Scorpio season, to kind of get stuck in those, you know, in the dark. So I think that's your main kind of, that's what you're being asked to release. And it may, you know, relate as well to Rubeus, because of course negative emotion can sometimes be passion, you know. So yes, I think letting go of that and then really allowing the happiness to come in. So letting go of that sorrow, depression, despondency, and also being down on yourself. You know, again, I think negative self-talk here as well could be what this is talking about. So fascinating stuff. I'm going to get a couple of trinkets just to end off. I'm going to do them on the sun and the moon, and then on the outcome. Seems to be stuck. Oh dear. So we've got the anchor here on Letitia, and so for me this is really about letting this be your anchor. So letting happiness, joy, optimism, enthusiasm be your anchor, your go-to, your sort of your baseline, rather than Tristia. I think that's a good way to see that, and that if you can anchor yourselves in that kind of positivity, then I think the sky's the limit for you. It just makes it easier for you to manifest and so on. Lovely. So for the sun, we've got the bouquet, and for me this kind of echoes the energy of Venus in Taurus, which is essentially quite positive. I mean, Venus in Taurus is very sensual and you know, kind of rooted in the earth. And you know, if I think about a missio, it's also about the transience of life, the transience of the natural world, but then, you know, it doesn't mean that there isn't beauty in that either. So I think it's also sort of maybe asking you to think about when you are reflecting philosophically that, you know, the only constant is change, particularly here in the physical realm, but that doesn't mean that there isn't beauty in that experience. It isn't all about loss. It's also about it's that transience that actually makes beautiful experiences more beautiful, because they don't endure. If they endured, they would be boring. So I think it's asking you to sort of see the beauty in, you know, even in loss. Almost in a way echoing Chiron, you know, when I was talking about, you know, turning pain into power, and that beatification process of making something difficult beautiful. You know, think about art. A lot of art that's what it is. Okay, let's have one for Beaver. Okay, so being strategic, which I think is echoing this Mercury Saturn sextile. So when it comes to moving forward with joint projects, being very strategic, making sure that any agreements that you come to or documents that you sign are very much in your favor. Okay, wonderful. And then for Puella, we've got the Clover and the Heart. So really pointing to a change of luck when it comes to relationships. So if you've been having a difficult time, you know, over the last couple of months, particularly during that Mars retrograde, just know that better times are coming. And as I say, we are seeing that in you know, in your two relationship houses. So definitely a kind of an upswing when it comes to emotions and the emotional body. Okay, yeah, wonderful. So for Tristia, we've got the Lily, and to me this is really kind of summing up the whole theme of the eclipse for you, which is about taking learned experience and turning it into wisdom. So you know, the pain of loss, the sort of the difficulties that we endure through suffering, this is how we grow, and this is how we acquire wisdom. And Lily's all about wisdom. It's also about purity. So in that sense, I feel it is echoing the themes of Chiron, in the sense of you know, what I was talking about in terms of self-containment and individuality, so disentanglement. So I think you have been learning important lessons, and this is going to be your almost like the culmination to, you know, to make sure that you've fully integrated this lesson is you know, growth through suffering, but also learning, kind of growing wiser in terms of the experiences that you've had, the difficult experiences that you've had kind of recently, but taking that information and turning it into something that you can teach others, for example. So Chiron here in Aries, I think again being sort of emphasized, but also just, you know, it's fair to say that if life was all wonderful, we wouldn't really feel pushed to grow. So Saturn for me is all about the pressure that we are kind of pushed under through circumstances. We grow and we learn through crisis, through pain, through suffering. And I think this is really just asking you to acknowledge how much you've learned and grown over the last 6 months or so, you know, even through difficult experiences. And, you know, taking that pain, turning it into power, and perhaps being able to communicate it to others so that you can help others, and, you know, perhaps also become a teacher. That can be about, you know, you speaking your truth, your kind of the wisdom of life experience sort of thing. So I think a really, really wonderful reading, Aries. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've enjoyed this, I'd always appreciate it if you hit the like button, leave me a comment below if it's resonated, and yes, wonderful reading. I wish you all the best for this 2-week period, and I'll see you again for your solar eclipse forecast.